have the floor.
Members of the press, radio and TV viewers, those online, good day. I will be very brief. From the Ministry of VROMI, the following updates. Regarding the traffic lights at Prince Bernard Bridge, work will commence next week with anticipation of completion by the end of the same week. Included in the installing of new wiring is also the Service Level Agreement, SLA, which has been pending with the Ministry of VROMI for the past 4 years. This SLA allows for the regular maintenance of the control board, which has unfortunately not been kept up to date with the right technology, and as such will be part of the plans going forward in terms of regular maintenance. Speaking of regular maintenance, one of the things that we have also noticed in the ministry is the lack of regular maintenance that has happened. We noticed it particularly with the sinkhole that we have, was recently in the press that it will actually be condemned, as mentioned. But we actually have to look at it from the point of view of how can we ensure and safeguard road safety. And one of the key things for that is the establishment of the road fund. So in the last 2 weeks, my ministry has been busy actually making the road fund initiatives, in the beginning of discussions around the road fund. It has been pending for quite a number of years and it has not been addressed. And secondly, with the regards the issues of Cahill, the road work has happened that now allows that the water is no longer a threat, whatever water is there today. Of course, like many other roads in St. Maarten, is because lack of drainage that goes part and parcel to our infrastructure projects. And please be aware that that too has been addressed and was first brought to the government on April 16th. So we have addressed it now in the last couple of days. From the Ministry of VROMI as well, very quickly, the Great Bay Channel will be opened today to reduce, of course, the risk of flooding in the Phillipsburg area. As such, swimming in the area of the channel is not advised. From the Ministry of General Affairs, the following updates. St. Maarten has recently joined the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CEDEMA. The organization is a regional agency for disaster management and affiliated with CARICOM. The objective of joining is to enhance technical capacity for the country. Secondly, as it relates to the upcoming parliamentary elections, persons are reminded that voting cards can be picked up this week, Monday, July 8th to Friday, July 12th at the government building from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. and this coming Saturday, July 13th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Please remember to walk with your ID. Not everybody knows you. From July 16th, voting cards, uncollected voting cards, will be distributed via the post office. Following this, a new date for collection at the government building will be announced for all remaining uncollected voting cards. Finally, I wish to remind the population of my statements calling for a safe and calm election season. St. Maarten has always been a tolerant and respectful place, and we cannot allow hate speech and calls to violence to become part of our political culture. I urge all leaders to condemn such acts and remind all persons that freedom of speech ends where violence and hate begins. I thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister Gumbs. I would now like to invite members of the media, starting with Bibi Hotshot, to pose your question.
First, Laika, thank you. How many rounds do we have? Because I have, he has 2 ministries and I have a host of questions.
We'll see how far we get, Bibi. You can go ahead.
All right. First of all, as the Minister of VROMI, we are in the midst of hurricane season. Just last week, you saw what happened to our Caribbean brothers and sisters with Beryl and flooding whatsoever, on all of the things that came with it. What exactly is being done with the trench cleaning? When is going to start? And can you tell us, give us some update on the court case with the contractor that took government to court? And I'm speaking specifically about a trench cleaning in this case.
Yep, perfect. Thank you, Bibi, for the question. Indeed, the trench cleaning has had my attention since coming into the office. I want to set forth the following facts. The trench cleaning was tendered 2 years ago. Upon awarding of the contract For some reason, we are actually investigating exactly why it wasn't awarded. It just sat there for the past 2 years, 2.5 years actually. And as such, what government has been doing, and by government I mean Ministry of VROMI, we have actually been doing ad hoc trench work. What this means is that basically whenever a request is made for a trenching, government, Ministry of VROMI puts out a request, sends one of the contractors to clean the trenches, and that's what's been happening now for the past 2.5 years. What this means in terms of our budget is that the government is actually spending far more money on trench cleaning than they would if they actually had awarded the contract, as was won, from what we're seeing quite fairly, by the respective company. Regarding the court case, we are dealing with it. We are going to actually call in the different stakeholders to discuss how to move forward, because from what we are seeing, not only is it actually causing a lot of sort of ad hoc actions around cleaning, it also costs the country a lot more money. I would like to remind everyone that while it may seem as if the trench cleaning hasn't commenced, trench cleaning has, of course, been happening. Just last week, I did a tour of a few of the more major trenches. We went through Point Blanche, for example, which has a major trench. That has since been cleaned. The cleaning of the areas around Dutch Quarter have already happened. In some areas, I'd like to point out that why you may see grass in some areas is that to avoid the potential of erosion, the ministry actually does keep some grass in some areas. There's also that some areas also have not had trench maintenance for years. One of them in particular is the trench at Corralita Road, which has now the added challenge of it collapsing into the walls of the trench actually collapsing into the trench itself. So to remove the actual trees would be more detrimental. So we're actually looking now to see how we can continue the original concrete surfacing of the trench that started near the baseball field throughout the length of the entire trench. But in the meantime, it's important to note that we are taking preventative measures. If you go to that trench right now, there's almond trees growing in the trench. If you know, an almond tree takes quite some time to grow. So it's testament to the fact that nothing really has been done sustainably with regards to trenching. But it has my attention, and rest assured that trenching is ongoing. It's ad hoc. It may seem as if it's slow, but again, some areas do need to maintain a certain level of vegetation to avoid erosion, and also to avoid, to slow down the water as well, as it may just go much faster through some more built-up areas. Yep.
Thank you, Minister Beebe.
just
Judy, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Minister, I just wanted to ask regarding the sinkhole. Is there any indication as to what caused this in the first place, and would just filling it with that solve the problem? I mean, this is a main thoroughfare on the island. And I also wanted to ask for an update. I'm not sure if the Prime Minister updated you on this, but if you do have one, I would appreciate an update on the request for assistance from the Netherlands and on the consortium talks. And this is regarding the issue with GEBE. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Regarding the sinkhole, it's important to know that it was in the beginning called a sinkhole. In actuality, it's not a sinkhole. It's the effects of a damaged culvert. So with a sinkhole, essentially what happens is that actually earth material is what's collapsing underneath, and thus the road is being impacted. In this case, it's the collapse of a man-made object, which is a drainage or culvert. Important to note is why the choice was taken to actually not repair this existing culvert, but to actually just condemn it and fill it, is because the existing culvert actually directs the water over into Indigo Bay. One of the things that we would have had happened is that had this sinkhole, had this culvert been repaired, the water would have been essentially directed to flow over into Indigo Bay. And now that Indigo Bay has been developing into a neighborhood, the sort of diverting the water into that what was once a rural area, undeveloped area, is no longer feasible. In the short term, then, we are condemning the sinkhole, remembering that this culvert has been damaged for some time. The water is naturally flowing down towards the roundabout at the top of the water tanks, so right as you enter Cahill, Khaleja. And the way how the land is set up, that by the time the water gets there, it doesn't have the same amount of strength to cause any damage. So in the short term, we're condemning the sinkhole, and the water will flow and naturally disperse into very non-threatening amounts towards the roundabout. In the long term, the solution is we have to assess the topography, so the way how that curve in the hill is, we have to reinforce it, because we do see some shifting of the hillside in some areas with the road stretching. And also the idea is that we're also going to look at the construction of a new drainage just at the bend of the curve of the road on the hillside. Again, going back to the fact that it's been the very common practice to build roads and not to maintain roads. And this is something that I've been championing to have changed, particularly with the road fund, which has to be established. I got the question actually recently, where are the road taxes going? In government, the money that comes in from road tax goes to a general pot, and it just gets fed out that way. The road fund really has to be established to protect and maintain the roads, because we cannot continue just ad hocly paving roads without maintaining. I recently mentioned a recent press release as well. We are busy. This morning, we signed, last week we signed the road resurfacing program. The previous administration started the hard surfacing program, which has made a lot of secondary roads become paved, but doesn't have the necessary drainage. So what's going to happen is that it looks nice for a couple of months, and it sort of is gimmicky and very, attractive for the population, but in the long term, it's unsustainable. So by the end of the year, you're going to start seeing erosion. We've seen erosion in some places already. You're going to see the undermining of the road. So we have to look at more sustainable ways to protect the road. And the culvert, for example, and the collapse of that is a prime example of the lack of maintenance over the years, and as well the lack of the more ad hoc nature of how VROMI has been operating for the last couple of years. Yeah. Sorry, yes, indeed, thank you. A bit in the talks, I will actually state that that discussion is still ongoing. With regards to the generators, we are still on track with our tentative timeline for the arrival of generators. I am in close consultation with the management of GB on this topic. I have made sure that I sort of have regular conversations daily if necessary, because I think one of the key things that has been the challenge is communication. I think a lot of misinformation, a lot of distrust is there, and I think in the past week, in this capacity as Deputy Prime Minister, one of my key attempts has been to bridge the gap between the company and the government, because it doesn't serve anybody if we're not in communication to solve this problem. Yeah.
Thank you. Emily, you have the final question.
Good morning, thank you. My question is related to GB as well. Are you, as Minister, comfortable and in agreement with the way the tender process for the rental of the generators was executed by GEBE? Which companies were selected? There's a short-term and mid-term solution for providing those generators. Can you provide the names of those companies? And can you update us on the crankshaft issue?
Okay. With regards to the tender process that happened, I will say that the tendering process, and correct me if I'm wrong, ministers, because during that time I was not officially a part of COM, the tendering process actually happened directly without the consultation of the council ministers for the generators. Indeed, with all the council ministers being involved, my personal feelings around the process, if it did come to government, would have gone most naturally to COM, so that would have been a more unified decision. So I can't necessarily speak of my personal opinion from decisions that would have been taken by government as a whole. And in terms of the crankshaft, I will give you an update, if possible, in writing on that for you. I think you had one more question I might have missed.
So are you...
Oh, the companies. Yes, indeed, that I can share.
I'm sorry?
That I'm unable to share.
You're unable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And are you comfortable with the tender process that GB executed? Are you supportive, comfortable, in agreement with the way that tender process was executed?
So essentially, we have no insight into the tender process, and I think these are one of the things that we have brought forward in discussions in so much as to say, There's been a lot of discussions around the role of government and how far government can go into the insights of a government-owned company. And I think, we're very strong proponents of good corporate governance, but I think in times of crisis, we do have to look at how far that extent of that sort of separation happens for the fact that these are government-owned companies.
Can you explain why you're unable to share the names of the companies supplying the generators?
Indeed, because from what we understood, there is a NDA between between the company and the companies, so to speak, who have put forward. Like in most bidding processes, you're not necessarily allowed to know how the process went and who all applied. What you can know in the end is who got it, but that's an NDA between GEBE and the relevant company.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister Gumbs. Members of the media, this does bring us to the end of the question and answer session for all ministers. However, any further questions can be sent to the Minister's Cabinet in writing. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, July 10, 2024. For rebroadcast, tune into stmartingov.org, St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, Telemcell TV Plus Channel 15, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, and YouTube channel Government of St. Martin. For video on demand, log on to the Government of St. Martin's YouTube channel. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Roleika Roach and wishing you a pleasant day further.